The ballroom glittered like fresh snow under warm lights. Red ribbons curled around the railings, and a tall tree sparkled beside the stage. I sat at the head table with my napkin folded on my lap, trying to enjoy the music and the smell of cinnamon and roast beef. Jamie Reeves stood and lifted his crystal glass. His grin was bright and hard, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Audrey," he boomed, voice carrying across clinking silverware, "make sure you ask Santa for a new job this year, because you won't have one here much longer." Laughter rolled through the room, sharp as sleet, scraping across my nerves like broken glass. My chest ached, but my hand stayed steady. I reached into my bag, slid a sealed envelope across the linen toward him, and met his gaze. "Merry Christmas, Jamie." He smirked, tore it open, and started to read. The smirk slipped. His fingers twitched on the page, eyes widening slightly. I took a sip of water to cool the burn in my throat, silently praying for strength to hold my ground. Around us, the band played a soft carol. He swallowed hard, eyes moving faster, then slower, then stopping on the signature at the bottom. For the first time all evening, the room began to quiet. Conversations died like candles in a wind, each word snuffed out as though the air itself had thinned. A server paused mid-step with a tray of sugared cranberries. I watched Jamie's face turn the color of the tablecloth. He held the letter tighter, as if squeezing it could change the words. I knew exactly where his eyes had landed, the audit chair's signature. The line that said materials were received and logged at 10:04 a.m., beyond dispute. His mouth barely moved. "Where did you get this?" he asked, voice low and cracked, trembling with something he couldn't quite hide. I kept my tone calm. "After dessert, Jamie, enjoy your evening." I dabbed my lips with the napkin and set it down neatly, the gesture deliberate. Under the table, I heard the soft buzz of his phone. He was already texting, thumbs jerking furiously. His jaw worked as he tried to smile at a director across the table. The director did not smile back. On the dance floor, someone whispered my name, then his. I could feel the current shifting, heat leaving the crowd like breath on a window. Jamie looked at me again, eyes narrow now, hunting for some mistake, searching for an opening he could twist. I just lifted my water and took another slow sip. The band kept playing, but the notes felt thin, like brittle ice cracking under too much weight. 2 months earlier, he had called me into his glass office. Late sun striped the floor, and the blinds were half drawn like a secret waiting to be told. He leaned on his desk, coat off, tie loose, charm dialed down. "We need to move revenue into this quarter," he said, tapping a file with impatience. "Don't overthink it." I kept my voice even. "We recognize on delivery, not on promise. If you want a change, I'll need it in writing." He laughed, short and hard, like snapping wood. "Stop being dramatic, Audrey. We're just smoothing timing. You analysts get stuck in rules." I nodded once, a small movement. "Please send the instruction by email, then." The corners of his mouth tightened. He pushed the file toward me. "Use Northbridge. They're already approved." I opened it and saw gaps in the due diligence. Bank data looked thin, almost fabricated. "The checklist isn't complete," I said. "Finish it," he snapped. "We're closing the quarter." I left, heart steady, steps slow, eyes memorizing every detail. At my desk, I typed a clean meeting summary with the facts, attached a scan of the incomplete documents, and forwarded it to my work archive and my private legal folder. I added a time-stamped note, verbal pressure to accelerate revenue without support, undermining compliance and trust. A week later, after most people had gone home, he waved me into a small conference room for a call. The lights hummed softly, fluorescent glow buzzing faintly like a warning. "We'll loop in Northbridge," he said, already dialing. A voice answered without video, filtered and flat. The speaker said they were finalizing banking details. I asked for their due diligence pack. Tax IDs, beneficial owners, service scope, delivery schedules. "Already approved," Jamie cut in. He slid a single-page approval across to me. It had his initials, not the committee's. My eyes caught a line on a bank letter. Account based in the Caymans, a detail that did not belong. My stomach cooled. "We can't book revenue on a promise to ship next quarter," I said. "Bill and hold requires written client request, storage control, and risk transfer proof." The voice on the line chuckled, a sound oily and dismissive. "We'll make it work." I kept my tone flat. "Please send all documentation for compliance review." There was a pause. To Tomorrow, the voice said. We hung up. Jamie leaned close. Don't jam the gears, Audrey. Be a team player. I filed the call notes, screen captures, and the bank letter. I printed a copy too. Paper did not forget. I added a red tab in my binder labeled Vendor, Northbridge, Gaps, Caymans, tightening the noose 1 quiet inch at a time. The next morning, the office buzzed like a hive ready to swarm. I stopped by sales to confirm delivery schedules. Benji stared at his screen, shoulders tight as wire. Don't drag me into anything, he muttered without looking up. Quarter's ugly. We need this. I kept my voice gentle. I'm asking for dates, not drama. He rubbed his temple. Dates are flexible right now. I wrote that down, word for word, every syllable a small nail. In operations, Priya pulled me aside near the copier. Please, just let it go, she whispered, eyes darting to see if anyone heard. People are counting on bonuses. Rent is due. Kids' gifts. Her eyes were sad and fierce at once. I follow policy, I said. Policy protects all of us. She gave a small broken laugh. Policy won't pay my landlord. I felt the weight settle. They weren't blind. They were scared, trapped in silence. Fear made smart people step around holes until they fell in, dragged under by decisions they didn't make. I returned to my desk and checked the vendor portal. No full file for Northbridge. No signed client bill and hold request. I emailed compliance and copied legal. Documentation incomplete. Recommend hold. Then I paused and opened my contract. I highlighted the clause again. Public disparagement by a senior leader triggers severance and accelerates equity. I slid a yellow tab on that page. Tripwire, ready and waiting. Emerald Systems asked me to meet at a small cafe near their office. I arrived early and set my folder down on the table. When their director of finance came in, she ordered black coffee and got right to it. Our invoices look early, she said. Dates don't match deliveries. I didn't accuse anyone. I stuck to facts. Per our policy, we recognize revenue on delivery. If you request bill and hold, we need it in writing, with storage terms and risk transfer documented. She watched me closely. Have any shipments arrived that we haven't requested? I shook my head. Not shipped, but I've seen attempts to accelerate. She took a slow breath. If we sniff funny math, we freeze spend. Period. I nodded. Understood? I showed her a neutral checklist of what was missing. No names, just requirements. She slid the paper back. Keep this clean, Audrey. We want the partnership, not headlines. On my walk back, cold air cleared my thoughts. I typed a short memo to myself. Client sensing pressure. Risk of freeze high. At my desk, I updated my timeline. If Emerald pulled back, the quarter would crack. That wasn't my plan, but it was his consequence. I chose patience. Patience and paper. That night, my apartment floor became a map of the truth. I spread out emails, call logs, and policy pages. I labeled everything with color tabs. Green for revenue, blue for vendor, orange for compliance exceptions. I printed Jamie's initials on the approval and slid it into a clear sleeve. I added screen grabs with timestamps. Every note I'd written at my desk, I rewrote neatly on index cards. Facts only. No heat. At the back, I placed a copy of my contract. I highlighted the clause about public disparagement and a second clause on retaliation. I underlined accelerated equity twice and slid in a yellow tab marked Tripwire. I built a table of contents and numbered exhibits. I created a cross-reference page. Exhibit A links to Exhibit F. Page counts matched. When my printer coughed its last sheet, I sat on the rug and checked every section with a pencil. The binder closed with a satisfying click. I tucked a spare USB in a tiny envelope and taped it under my desk drawer. Then I wrote a one-page cover letter to the audit chair. Neutral tone, exact dates, chain of custody. I signed and dated it. There was no anger in those pages. Only the simple shape of what had happened. I booked a morning courier for December 23rd. The confirmation came with a tracking code. I saved it in 3 places. Next, I drafted a letter to legal. It was short, to be released only if there is public disparagement or retaliatory action against me. I attached citations, policy sections, case numbers, my contract clauses. I sealed it in an envelope and stored it in a locked drawer at work, with a second copy in my apartment safe. Then I set calendar holds with bland names, year-end tasks, to hide my real schedule. I made a list of what I would and would not say if asked. That's not accurate. Please put it in writing. I'm happy to share with the audit chair. I practiced the lines in my bathroom mirror until my voice didn't shake. I chose my outfit for the dinner. dark green dress, simple earrings, low heels. I could walk in fast. I charged my phone, cleared my voicemail, and synced my files to an offline drive. After midnight, I stood by my window and watched snow drift under a street lamp. The city felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. I set my alarm and slept with the binder on my desk, its weight like a vow. 2 days before the dinner, HR emailed me. "We'd love you at the head table." The message had a little tree emoji and too many exclamation points. Placement wasn't kindness, it was theater. He wanted me under the lights when he cut me down. I replied with a polite yes and closed my laptop. In the office, the decorations went up. Garlands on doorways, a tiny Santa taped to the copier. People were tired and punchy, talking about flights and gifts. I moved through the noise like a river stone, solid and smooth. In the restroom, I looked at myself under the bright bulbs and held my gaze. "Stay calm," I told my reflection. "Facts, not heat." That afternoon, I met Nathan from internal audit near the elevators. He blinked behind his glasses. "Big night coming?" he asked. "Big enough," I said. He lowered his voice. "If you need a receipt log, I'm around." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. On my way out, I passed Jamie's office. Laughter spilled from the doorway. He was telling a story, hands wide, crowd charmed. I kept walking, let him enjoy his stage. He had no idea it was built on rails I had laid myself. On the morning of December 23rd, I set the binder in a padded sleeve and met the courier in the lobby. He checked my ID, scanned the label, and sealed the pouch. "Signature required," he said. I nodded and watched the elevator close on the package like a curtain. Upstairs, I refreshed the tracking page every few minutes, then forced myself to stop. I worked through a small stack of clean tasks to steady my mind. Variance notes, a vendor ticket, a reconciliation. At 10:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. "Delivered. Signed for by A. Klein. Audit Chair." I read the message twice, then once more. A steady weight settled in my chest. The rails were live now. My job was to stand on them without flinching. I printed the delivery notice and filed it behind the cover letter. I texted myself a reminder. Dinner. Arrive early, sit left of center, water not wine. After lunch, I placed a second envelope in my bag, the one for Jamie. It held a copy of the intake notice and a single page from Emerald, their warning about freezing spend if numbers bent again. I zipped the bag shut. Outside, the air bit my cheeks. Inside, my pulse was calm. Tonight would show who broke the rules and who kept them. The ballroom shimmered with gold and red lights, the kind meant to blur worry into cheer. Waiters glided between tables carrying trays of roast duck and sugared almonds. I sat where HR had placed me, close enough to the stage that every spotlight brushed my face. My palms rested steady on the white linen, the envelope safe in my bag. Jamie rose at the podium, his glass lifted high. "To Northgate Analytics," he boomed, his voice booming against the chandeliers. Laughter and applause followed. Then he paused, grin widening, eyes locking on me. "And Audrey, don't forget to ask Santa for a new job. You won't have one here much longer." The room erupted with chuckles, some nervous, some sharp. My heart thudded, but my hand moved smoothly. I pulled out the envelope, slid it across the polished table toward him, and leaned back in my chair. "Merry Christmas, Jamie." His smirk froze mid-curve. He tore it open, scanning quick, lips tightening. The laughter dimmed. His hand gripping the paper began to tremble. Around us, forks paused midair, and the band's carol faltered, one note held too long. The words in his hand were heavier than champagne. He didn't laugh again. He bent closer to the envelope, eyes darting faster, then stopping dead at the signature line. His jaw clenched. I lifted my glass, calm on the outside, though my ribs ached from the pounding inside. "Where did you get this?" he muttered, low enough that only I could hear. I set my glass down gently. "After dessert, Jamie, enjoy your evening." His face drained and sweat prickled his brow. He snapped the papers shut too late. The damage was already done. People had seen enough, his colorless cheeks, his shaking hands. Under the table, I saw the glow of his phone. His thumbs flew across the screen, firing off desperate messages. Two directors whispered into each other's ears, eyes shifting from him to me. The music picked up again, trying to stitch the room back together, but the notes rang hollow. I took another sip of water, slow and deliberate. Jamie glanced around like a trapped animal. He tried to smile at a VP down the table, but the VP didn't smile back. The charm that always carried him now collapsed in silence. The night had only just started, and his mask was already cracking. 15 minutes later, I stepped toward the service hallway, the hum of the ballroom muffled behind me. Suddenly, a shadow cut across the path. Jamie. He blocked the exit, his smile gone, his eyes sharp with fury. "You think you're clever?" he hissed, his voice pitched low, teeth bared. The hall smelled faintly of detergent and roasted meat. I kept my stance even, my clutch pressed to my side. "No," I said calmly. "I think I'm careful." His nostrils flared, fists tight at his sides. The air between us felt electric, brittle. For a moment I thought he might shout, but footsteps echoed. From the far end, Creed from legal appeared, suit jacket off, holding a glass of water. His brows rose at the sight of us. "Something wrong here?" Jamie stepped back, trying to paste a grin across his face. "Just a misunderstanding," he said quickly. Creed's gaze lingered on me. I nodded once. "All good," I replied. But inside, I knew Jamie's desperation had already slipped into anger. And anger, when cornered, always left a trail. Creed glanced at the envelope still clutched in Jamie's hand. "Mind if I take a look?" His voice was calm, almost casual, but the weight in it was unmistakable. Jamie hesitated, then shoved it toward him. Creed unfolded the page, reading slowly, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. His lips pressed thin. "This will need explanation," he said, eyes never leaving the document. Jamie barked, "She's twisting this out of context." Creed looked at him evenly. "Then you won't mind putting it in writing." The words fell heavy in the narrow corridor. Jamie sputtered, half a protest, half a laugh. "Of course. Sure." I stood still, letting the moment stretch. Creed folded the paper again, sliding it into his folder with quiet precision. "I'll hold this for now," he said, already turning back toward the ballroom. Jamie's eyes bored into me, but I didn't flinch. I simply smoothed my dress and stepped past him, my heels clicking against the tile. For the first time that evening, it wasn't me under the microscope, it was him. When we returned to the ballroom, the mood had shifted. The music still played, but softly, like background noise no one could hear. Conversations had dulled to whispers. Jamie picked up his glass, trying to reset the stage. "To team spirit," he announced, forcing brightness into his voice. But the tremor in his hand betrayed him. The glass rattled against the table as he set it down too quickly. A few people raised their drinks, but the cheer was gone. Across the table, a manager leaned toward her colleague and murmured, eyes flicking at me, then at Jamie. I kept my face neutral, eating a small bite of roast as though nothing were amiss. The band played a carol, but the rhythm faltered when the pianist missed a key. Jamie's laughter tried to cover it, but the sound died in his throat. I could feel the questions growing in the room, unspoken but heavy. The man who had always owned the stage suddenly looked small, hunched slightly, his collar damp. I finished my water and set the glass down with a quiet clink. The night wasn't over, but the balance had already begun to tip. Victor, our CFO, slipped into the empty chair beside me as the band drifted into another thin carol. He kept his smile for the room, but his voice dropped to a hush. "If there's exposure, I want it clean," he said, eyes on the centerpiece instead of my face. It wasn't comfort, it was survival. I nodded once. "Then keep the lanes clear," I said. He scratched his cufflink like it itched. "Can I see Exhibit C?" he asked, meaning the vendor approvals. I lifted my napkin, buying a quiet second. "Request it through legal," I said. "Chain of custody matters." His glance flicked toward the corridor where Creed had disappeared with the envelope. "Understood." Across the table, a director pretended to laugh at a joke and failed. Victor checked his phone, turned it face down, then picked it up again. "If this lands badly with clients, we'll be in the press by Monday," he muttered. I kept my fork steady. "Then follow policy tonight," I replied. He studied me, weighing whether I would bend. I didn't. The tree lights blinked in a slow rhythm that made the room feel underwater. "Fine," he said at last. "I'll route requests through Creed." That single sentence told me the tide had shifted. Not 10 minutes later, Victor's phone buzzed against the linen. He glanced down, and the color left his face. He leaned toward me without looking like he was leaning. "Emerald just emailed me in the audit chair," he whispered. "They're pausing all new business until compliance clears." I let out a small breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Around us, the chatter skimmed the surface, but a quiet ripple spread table to table as notifications reached other pockets. A sales VP read the subject line and went still. Someone near the bar stopped mid-laugh. I reached for my water. They warned us, I said. They did, Victor answered, voice flat. Across the room, Jamie watched the same wave of messages hit his loyal circle. His posture changed, chin tucked, shoulders up, as if that could make him smaller than the problem. The band played Silent Night, and for once the title fit. Victor typed a tight reply. Acknowledged. Compliance review underway. He slid the phone back into his jacket, then pulled it out again, restless. If the pipeline freezes, bonus pools go with it, he said. Then the truth needs daylight, I said. He swallowed, nodded once, and pushed his chair back. I'll find Creed, he said, already moving. I stepped toward the coat check to clear my head, the cool air from the hallway brushing my skin. The racks were lined with wool and velvet, tags swinging like small flags. Footsteps quickened behind me. Jamie's hand caught the door before it closed, palms slapping hard against the frame. He leaned in, breath sharp with champagne. You'll regret this, he hissed, low and steady. I felt the old flare of fear, then the newer habit I had practiced, slow breath, simple words. Please put that in writing, I said. He blinked, thrown by the script he didn't control. His mouth curled. You think your little binder scares me? It's not meant to, I said. It's meant to be accurate. A pair of heels clicked past, then paused. A board advisor, silver hair, narrow eyes, turned toward us. I heard in writing, she said, voice crisp. Both of you. Come with me. Jamie tried a laugh. We're fine. She didn't smile. Now. The hallway swallowed the music as we followed her to a side room. My pulse thudded in my ears, but my steps were even. He wanted a corner with no witnesses. Instead, he'd earned a table and a witness list. The side room held a long screen and a small stack of bottled water. Victor was already there, sleeves rolled, a laptop open to the general ledger. Creed stood beside him with my envelope, the crease now soft from handling. The board advisor shut the door. Walk me through shipments and invoices, she said. Victor projected the schedule, promised ship dates, actual fulfillment, invoice postings. A clean red line traced policy. A messy gray trail showed practice. I watched the cursor hover over entries where dates didn't match. Explain, she said, her tone cool as ice. Jamie cleared his throat. Timing differences? Normal at quarter end. Victor clicked deeper. Then why do these approvals show bill and hold with no client request on file? The cursor highlighted initials, CR mine were nowhere. Silence thickened. Creed slid out the Cayman Bank letter. And beneficial owner disclosures for Northbridge, he asked. Jamie spread his hands. Operations has that. Victor shook his head. They don't. He zoomed into the approval PDF. The stamp showed Jamie's username and timestamp 2 hours after a compliance hold notation. The board advisor's pen stopped moving. I felt the room tilt, not from fear now, but from gravity doing its job. Paper had weight. Tonight it dropped. Creed turned to me, voice level. Audrey, do you feel safe to continue in your role while we review this? The question was standard, but the air around it wasn't. I opened my clutch and slid out my contract copy, the clause already highlighted. Public disparagement by a senior leader constitutes good reason for resignation, I read softly, triggering severance and accelerated equity. Creed's brows rose. He took the paper, scanned the paragraph, then the signature page. When did the disparagement occur? He asked. Tonight, I said, during the toast, in front of the company. The board advisor noted the time. Victor exhaled. Jamie made a scoffing sound. A joke, he said. Everyone laughed. I met his eyes. That was the point. Creed nodded once. We'll document it. He looked back at me. Are you invoking the clause now? I steadied my breath. I'm preserving my rights and continuing to cooperate. He seemed almost relieved by the line I chose. Understood. He handed the page to the board advisor, then faced Jamie. Until the board meets tomorrow at 9, IT will lock vendor approvals and revenue recognition entries. Jamie's jaw flexed. That's overkill. It's governance, Creed replied. The word landed clean and final, like a door closing. By the time we returned to the ballroom, the evening had shifted into a hushed unease. Servers continued pouring wine, but conversations dropped into careful murmurs. Creed leaned close to the head of IT, who slipped away with his laptop bag. Within minutes, I saw a quiet ripple. System access was being locked down. Freeze all vendor approvals pending review, Creed had ordered, and the tech team moved like shadows to comply. Jamie tugged at his collar, laughter trying to claw its way back into his voice. Just festive procedures, he muttered to no one in particular. But nobody laughed. His shirt darkened at the back with sweat. The CFO whispered instructions to a director, who nodded stiffly. The audit chair sent out a late-night calendar. Emergency board session, 9 a.m. Phones buzzed with the invitation, and every vibration made Jamie flinch. The band still played, but softly, like background noise to an unraveling. I took a sip of water, hands steady. The lock was engaged now. Even if he tried to shred or edit, every trail was frozen. All I had to do was wait, and waiting was something I had learned to do better than him. When the dinner ended, I slipped away early, coat buttoned against the cold. The city was strung with Christmas lights, blinking across frosted windows. I drove home with the heater humming, my fingers finally trembling now that no one was watching. At every stoplight, I breathed slow, reminding myself it was all documented. In my apartment, I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and collapsed into the armchair. The adrenaline leaked out, leaving me drained. My phone buzzed, a new email. Subject line, interim coverage plan, effective immediately. I opened it, eyes widening. Legal and audit would oversee approvals until further notice. Jamie's name was absent from the distribution list. My lips curved in a small, tired smile. The tripwire had worked. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling where faint shadows from the street lamps flickered like ghosts. The binder lay closed on my desk, but its presence filled the room like a sentry. Outside, faint carols drifted from a distant radio. I let the sound wash over me and whispered to myself, "Stay steady. Tomorrow is only beginning." Then I switched off the lamp and let sleep take me, heavy and dreamless. The boardroom glowed with winter light the next morning, glass walls revealing the skyline dusted white. I sat at one end, my binder neatly placed before me. Across the table, Jamie shifted in his chair, eyes darting at every shuffle of papers. Victor connected his laptop to the screen, displaying the ledger entries. Creed distributed copies of the documents from my envelope, each stamped with time and date. The audit chair spoke first. "We will review in order. Please answer only the questions asked." I nodded. Jamie gave a curt laugh, happy too. But as Victor walked through the mismatched shipment and invoice dates, Jamie's explanations tangled. Timing differences, clerical errors, temporary holds. Each phrase fell flatter than the last. Then Victor opened Exhibit C, the Cayman Bank letter. The silence deepened. "Your initials appear here," the audit chair said, tapping the page. Jamie swallowed, throat working. "Expedited approval," he whispered. "Necessary." I slid my notes forward. "Policy requires committee sign-off," I said softly. "None recorded." The board chair looked at me, then at him. "We'll deliberate." My pulse slowed. The rails were holding. By noon, the board returned. The chair's voice carried no emotion. "Effective immediately. Jamie Reeves is placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Communications will be issued by legal." He opened a folder and slid a draft press release across the table. "Revenue restatement for the quarter, vendor review, new oversight measures." Victor added, "Emerald has confirmed reinstatement of their expansion budget contingent on new safeguards." The chair turned to me. "They specifically requested an integrity operations unit. They want you to lead it." For a moment, the room blurred. 6 years of quiet labor, the long nights, the whispers of doubt, all crystallized into this. I drew a breath. "I'll accept." Jamie jolted upright. "You can't. She's exaggerating." His voice cracked. The board chair cut him off. "This is not a debate." Security entered quietly, hands clasped. Jamie's protest turned into sputters as he was guided toward the door. The sound of his footsteps faded, leaving only the shuffle of papers and the soft hum of the heater. My hands stayed folded, calm. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the city in clean white silence. Weeks later, I sat at a long table, not in a ballroom, but in a conference room freshly painted, the air smelling faintly of new carpet. Around me were 6 people, my team, chosen for integrity as much as skill. Laughter rippled easily now, without the sharp edge of fear. Plates of takeout spread across the table, coffee cups leaving rings on paper mats. I looked at the faces, earnest, focused, unafraid. I was no longer a shadow behind a boss's speech. I was the head of something built on truth. "To our first Integrity Unit dinner," I said, lifting my cup. They echoed the toast with genuine warmth. The best Christmas gift I had ever received wasn't under a tree. It was the moment my boss tried to humiliate me in public and instead triggered the rails I had laid with patience and care. In the end, I didn't need to shout, threaten, or break. I only needed to stay steady, gather facts, and let the truth do the work. As my team laughed beside me, I knew one thing with certainty. Calm was not weakness. Calm was the power that remade everything.